Um, with this video, there was two areas I want to cover, if I can. If I only have time for one area, fine, I'll just cover that, because I haven't thought about the title of the video yet, which is something that sometimes happens when I make videos on the spur of the moment. But the two subjects are very closely related in my opinion. I'll start with involuntary celibacy, the subject of involuntary celibacy, also known as perpetual celibacy. If you don't know, celibacy means lack of sexual intimacy. And you get situations whereby people are in that situation for religious reasons. For example, monks who have taken a vow of chastity or celibacy, nuns, and often usually people of faith who, for example, don't believe in sex until marriage. And I respect them, I've no issue with them unless they impose it on others. That's their business. But something that remains hugely taboo in Western society, especially in this country, is the subject of involuntary celibacy or perpetual celibacy. I say it remains taboo because very, very, very few people would talk about this. I believe someone has to, and I'm going to. I think I've raised this in another video, but I'm going to raise it again, and I'll explain why. I might make a second video to this. Basically, Britain is a country whereby young people are seen as being a bit of a geek or uncool or whatever if they haven't had sexual experience by a certain age. So you'll get a situation where a lot of people in social circles will lie about their sexual experience, frankly, and they'll say, oh, they've had so many girls, so many guys, and half the time I think it's lies. I think there is a small number of people who haven't actually had sexual experience, well into the late 20s or 30s and beyond. I'm not sure what the sort of standard age would be for losing virginity, and incidentally that's also a question in itself. How do we define losing virginity? Is it full sexual intercourse, i.e. the penis entering the vagina? And I'm talking here about heterosexual sex. Presumably in homosexual sex that would be anal sex. But is that how we would classify loss of virginity? Because you could have a situation that is very sexually intimate, but doesn't involve that. So, do people have had that experience, therefore should they be classed as virgins still? So there's a few grey areas with this. Almost certainly there is a taboo against people who haven't had sexual experience by a certain age. And not only are they seen as being geeks, but people actually then think, well, there's something wrong with them. Maybe this person is antisocial, or they are even dangerous or something like that, because, oh, there must be a reason why people haven't slept with them. But I strongly believe, and there's no point in me beating around the bush with this, I speak from my own experience. I'm a 28-year-old man and I've had very, very limited sexual experience. I'm saying this to the world in this video. Okay, maybe not many people will watch it, but I'm not going to censor this video. I'm saying it because I think there's many other people out there who can relate. I'm 28 years old, I've had very little sexual experience. So maybe I'll just devote this video to how that feels. I'm not a person of faith, well, at least I don't follow organised religion. I'm not an atheist, but I don't follow organised religion per se. And I don't particularly have any views on sex before marriage. It doesn't bother me, and I don't think it's immoral, as long as it's not in terms of betraying someone else. So for example, if a boyfriend and girlfriend have been together for a long time and they have sexual intercourse, I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. If they sleep with someone else, yes, that's different, because that's betrayal, and that's immoral. But sex before marriage, no, I don't see any reason why that's immoral. That's sort of the Christian view, because, oh well, sex is for procreation. I strongly believe that, yeah, it is for that purpose, but it should be enjoyable as well. And sexual experience between two consenting adults should be something that's not just for procreation. That defies human nature. But I think there's many people out there who simply don't have the circumstances where they can have a sexual experience. And a very large part of the problem here is that it remains a very taboo subject. I mean, how do you ask for advice on how to get sex? I'm putting that question out there. You know, some people say, oh well, people don't. The people who suffer this problem don't have confidence. In the case of guys, oh, they never speak to girls, they never socialise with girls. In the case of girls, vice versa, they never speak to men, etc. That's not always the case. Speaking for myself, I certainly don't consider myself a shy person. I'm not an introvert. I get on very well with women. I have a lot of female friends. So why have I suffered this? When I look at myself and I look at other guys, I think, what is the fundamental difference here? Why am I suffering this? Would I say I'm a virgin? I don't know, because again it covers a grey area. I don't want to, I'm being honest, but I don't want to be too crude in this video. I have had some sexual experience in terms of I've had intimacy with a woman, but whether it's full-on sex is another question. I'm not saying this for voyeurism or to put myself out there like some sort of ego trip. I'm honestly saying this because I believe there may be other people out there who need a voice. So I'm risking ridicule to say it. What approach can those people have? People who have had a similar experience to me, who aren't introvert, who really, they're not coming across as too desperate, who aren't that unattractive. How can they get that experience? Some people might say, oh well, find a girlfriend. But it really doesn't work like that, in the sense that that in itself might be a challenge for some people, because they find a situation where people, they're like, oh, they already have a boyfriend, what do you do? I think a lot of the time when it comes to relationships, some people just do have bad luck, and it isn't necessarily their own fault. I think it's very sad, because this is something that can't be underestimated. It can lead to profound loneliness, mental anguish, severe isolation, and suicidal tendencies. It's a very, very serious problem in my opinion, and it's something that just isn't spoken about. There's a lot of debate around the issue of prostitution, and it's inevitable I have to bring this into it. But no one ever mentions the subject of involuntary celibacy. The issue at the moment is about whether to follow the Scandinavian model and criminalise clients. Now, I'm very uncomfortable with this. And the reason is that I think some of the men visiting prostitutes are doing so because they're in this situation, and they do see it as a last resort. Now, that will be a controversial comment, because the argument goes, well, the men who pay for sex, they have the upper hand. But if in some of those cases it's men who are in a desperate situation where they are facing involuntary celibacy. Now, I know the feminist response is to sneer and say, oh, these guys can't control their dicks. That's a very callous attitude to this problem. A very callous attitude. And I'm under no illusions. I I've argued before that I don't think prostitution is an ideal situation. What I've argued for is that the current problem is sex workers work on the streets where they do face threats. I argue for a regulated situation which covers regulation across the board. For example, the girls and young women who are involved. Well, young women, it should not be girls under 18. Because there is a very serious problem with people trafficking. I'm under no illusions about those sort of problems. Likewise, I'm not stupid. I know probably no woman who's involved in the sex trade does it because she wants to. Pretty much they all do it because they have to. But I think it's wrong. They have to because of the circumstances they're in. But I think it's wrong to suggest that all male clients do it because they just want to fuck, and they're you know, having a lads night. Oh, let's go and get a prostitute for a fuck. To just vilify one side isn't going to solve the problem. And the thing is, men who do visit for just for the record, I haven't done it. I've nothing to hide. I haven't done it. But I'm just speculating on why I haven't done it, because it's a criminal offence in this country to be a client. So I haven't risked having a criminal offence. I haven't done it. Okay? But I'm speculating why guys take that risk. Why they risk being facing charges and visiting a sex worker. Now, in many circumstances, they maybe are guys who have a bad attitude to women and use women as a commodity. I fully accept that there are men out there who do take that attitude. But I don't believe that's the case across the board. And I believe that in situations where a man is visiting a sex worker because he sees no other way out from the absolute hell that is involuntary celibacy, then he's being punished twice. Because he's already gone through the hell of involuntary celibacy, and then he's being punished for having consensual adult sex. I think it's wrong to compare prostitution to rape, because that then trivializes rape. Prostitution is not an ideal situation. But the current review in Parliament is to start it off as violence against women. I think that's misguided. Because this is, I'm going to read out a comment. This is from a sex worker herself. This is directly from a sex worker. She makes a number of interesting points here. And I'll share my views afterwards. I have to be quick here because I'm running out of time. This is from the newspaper. Gemma, 24, from South East London, is strongly opposed to reports call for a new Scandinavian-style criminal offence banning the purchase of sexual services. I started doing sex work about 4 years ago when I began work as a stripper. I went on to work in massage parlours, and about a year ago I went independent, working from my home. The Nordic model is a failed piece of legislation that has not worked and is not reducing the amount of sex taking place. It is harmful and does not protect sex workers or keep them safe. If I decided I was too nervous to work alone, I would not be allowed to have a friend over to work in a pair for safety. It would technically mean I was running a brothel. What sex workers want is the removal of sanctions around sex work, like in New Zealand. Sex workers want decriminalisation. They do not want legalisation. Legalisation means the regulation of sex work. It punishes those vulnerable women who are not able to jump through the necessary hoops, for example refugees and mothers. It's a backdoor process of criminalisation. When a client is made to be a criminal, he isn't going to call the police to report suspected people trafficking. It is just driving it underground. This proposal would just create a blacker market than there already is. So just quickly, what she seems to be saying is that she wants more protection for women. This is what I'm reading into her statement. And she's obviously someone who knows what she's talking about because she is a sex worker. She wants more protection for women, not necessarily full legalisation, and that would go against what I was saying about regulation, but what she's saying seems to make some sense. because at the moment the legislation criminalises the sex workers, but she's also saying that criminalising clients would backfire. And I think that's just something to think about. I'm coming to the end of the bandwidth now, so I'll have to leave it there. But a quick thought to conclude this. There needs to be some sort of balance here, because sex work is always going to exist, and there's always going to be a situation where people are suffering from involuntary celibacy. No, I'm not saying that's always the reason why people visit sex workers, far from it. But it is a taboo subject and it needs to be addressed.